Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz here on a Friday night as I get on my headphones. Thank you for joining me. It's always great to have everybody tuning in. It's probably a bit of relief for a lot of coaches because we are no longer facing the buys. We finally have potentially full teams for everyone. So it is a massive relief. So we will obviously talk about that. A lot of people looking to finalise their team tonight or even pick up a 23rd player. So it is probably the last real movement as we head on the run home. So it's a bit of an exciting time in Supercoach. As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular the YouTube, Spotify. Get in contact with us via Twitter or X as it's called these days, Supercoach Insider 100 or Swiz26 for me directly. Excuse me. Now, I have done something a little bit different today. We have opened it up for a bit of fan cam talk, so we'll see if anybody wants to jump on. As always, the comments are there, so feel free to throw up your questions. I know a lot of people have some questions. We will try to cover them off as the show goes on. I don't have any time restrictions tonight, so we'll see how long we actually record for, and depending on how many questions we do have. The voice is a little croaky. I was in hospital earlier this week, on Tuesday actually, so a couple of cameras shoved down the old throat. So I apologise if it does come out. It'll come in and out at different times, but we will see how we go. And I am wearing my very funky beanie, which my dad gave me, saying that I'm always right because I'm Dave. So I thought, Dad, yes, I will wear it on the show tonight. All right, I'll quickly mention mine, and then I know I do have already a guest waiting, and who I'll get into in a moment. But for me, this week, it was actually a pretty good week. I was pretty happy with it. So I had 2201. So that moved me up to about 7,570 overall. So it's nice to be back inside the top 10,000. So at least it was a decent week. So I can't really complain there. The team is looking like this at the moment, as I won nearly all of my leagues last week with that score, which good. So the only disappointing thing probably at the moment is not having day costs, and I've got to probably my plans, depending on what I decide this week, is do I still go with the plan of trying to bring him in next week, or do I look at trying to get that 23rd player in, or do I look at trying to change Oliver to somebody? So there's a couple of things on my mind. So the one is I could just go Oliver to day cost via and use the cash from Rev. So that is definitely one thought there, and not worry about the fact that day cost is going to obviously drop money. The second part is I could just bring in a Simpkin or a Rosie, and loophole Oliver off the bench and have one of them as a cover, but then I don't have the cover for the back line, and I've got to look at that in future weeks. Or the third part to it would be just kind of leave it as it is and see what happens. I am running out of trades, so there's still 7 rounds to go after this. So I'm in no kind of rush to necessarily burn those trades, but my team is fairly well set up. So outside of just that Oliver issue, I'm fairly pretty well. Oliver and Dacos is really the only issue. I'm pretty happy with the side. Apart from that, so. Even if I wasn't bringing in the 23rd player, I could just potentially go Oliver to Dacos and then still have trades up my sleeve and keep it with that. And and just kind of maybe loophole a couple of the rookie players. So that is where we're sitting at the moment. Should hopefully do enough to give me on the run home. Alrighty, so I said we've got guests in the backstage, so I will get one of them on straight away. And this guy is a very special guest for us. Nath, welcome, mate.
Thanks, Swiz. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. I don't know if you can actually hear him backstage when I was scrapping on there, but
no, I did. Yep.
All good. For those who don't know, and that we obviously did have Nath on the show a few weeks ago, and since then, the ranking has improved, mate. Do you want to tell the community where you are ranked at the moment?
Yeah, certainly has. I think when I was on here, I was 4th or 5th overall.
Yep.
And then this week was sort of lucky enough to rise to rank 1 off the back of a sort of a monster week. Honestly, everything went right. I don't think I had one of my best 18 score below 100. So yeah, pretty good week for me. I think it was 2,300 was my total score for the round.
Yeah, it was. Yep, right on. So firstly, congratulations on that score, and congratulations on being number 1 overall at the moment, mate.
Cheers, Swiz. Yeah, definitely feels good, but don't want to get too ahead of myself. So still a lot of rounds to go, and running a bit fine on trade. So yeah, could easily fall even out of the top 10 very quickly. So, not counting my chickens, but wrapped with how the season's gone so far. Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. We've obviously been following your progress all the way through, and yeah, it's just great to see, especially one of our followers is actually doing so well, and really in the thick of things. Because as much as things can go wrong after the buys, the real movement time is through the buys. So if you've kind of got through that unscathed, you are in a really good position, to give it a real crack. I was just having a look because I know JP sent me the other day what was his rankings coming after the buy. So JP finished the buy. I think he was in third, and then obviously he won from there. So there wasn't a huge amount of movements. I think he dropped back to sixth, and then which was about 3 rounds after the buy periods, and then obviously then went from third, second, and then back to first again. So there, he was saying there wasn't a lot of movement between. Well, there was a lot of movement inside that top 10, but nobody was really coming in from that. There might have been one person that kind of came from the clouds. I think like that could potentially be this week's most overall person, who might be maybe the biggest threat, just after he put up, I think it was 2,400. That was, I think that was the weekly winner was a Bailey's team, 24-17. So him being 16th overall and having a pretty good side. He's got a couple of different pod players in there, and still I think he's got McKercher sitting there on the bench. So he does have a pretty good lineup. But yeah, you look through a lot of the other sort of top 10 teams, and quite similar. There's probably 1 or 2 pods between most teams, and then it really does come down to those VC captain choices. And while we've got there, mate, I'm actually going to add somebody else onto the stage. I think your screen's off at the moment, mate. If you can hear me, chuck your camera on, unless you're out doing something. Big J, how are you, mate?
I'm good. Unfortunately, I'm driving home. As you know, we do run the drive home on Thursdays. Slightly illegal, so prefer no camera at the moment. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, Big J, you've got Nath here, who's currently number 1 overall, mate.
Nice. Well, Nath, it's nice to meet you. If you keep it up, I'll chuck you on the show for an interview. Keep up the tradition of interviewing the number 1 people. But congratulations on the ranking so far. It's bloody amazing.
Yeah, cheers, Big J. I'll just say I love you and Joe's content throughout the week. I watch it all the time. So yeah, it's really good and nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. Nice to hear.
Outside of the Supercoach part, and so we're getting questions, we'll talk through some of that and in a moment. I know, talking to obviously and having close friends who are former winners, potentially your life's going to get a little crazy over these few weeks, apart from every decision that you're trying to make. I think you might be going on with the Supercoach boys next week as well.
Yeah, Elle invited me on to their official podcast, so yeah, should be there for the next week's episode. So that should be really fun. Get to go in, check out the scene, and share a little bit about, I guess, my Supercoach journey so far, and what's been working, what hasn't, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's been really cool.
One for everybody to watch out there. Sorry, Big J, you go, mate.
I was going to say, Nath, would you attribute kind of your success so far as what you've done throughout the season, or you started off with a really good team and that kind of helped push you along?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I've sort of been thinking about that myself quite a bit. I think there are definitely some players that I'd selected that had got me a massive leg up, so that were just starting picks that were really good. I'm talking probably Jack Steele and Crouch. Those 2 were sort of pretty big for me. But I definitely had some errors and some big moves early into the season. Like I dumped Nick Martin, Zach Fisher, Ollie Wines, all these guys sort of mid-prices a little bit, moved them out pretty quickly and turned them into Sarong and Ryan in rounds 1 and 2. So there's definitely some moves early, but really it was just that sort of correctional, structural change in the early rounds, and then basically just kept upgrading very early. So I think another thing that's helped me a lot has been sort of just holding on to a lot of guys. Like the big one obviously now is Grundy. Like I held Grundy for the whole season, when a lot of people were sort of jumping off him at that first buy because he hadn't looked great. I sort of just wanted to have another look at him at the SCG, was really my primary justification for holding. and that's turned out to be pretty good so far. So I think another big one wasn't starting Tom Green as well. That's been partly lucky with his 5. No one can claim skill on that, but just sort of, I guess, resisting the urge to pay up some of these guys.
Chris is claiming skill on that one. But yeah, no, you're right, Nath.
Yeah. But yeah, so just, I guess, not paying too much for a lot of guys. I know there was sort of this real temptation to get guys like Rao, Merritt. I don't know who else. There are a couple other ones, big ones floating around. I guess Tom Green as well in those early few rounds. He was like 640 or whatever. And he just held my time on it. I made a judgment call that some of those guys would come back down and they wouldn't sort of ultimately burn me not owning them. It worked out.
Yeah.
Could have easily gone the other way, of course. So, but some of those type of moves. So I guess to answer your question, it's a bit of a combination of both factors.
Yeah, because I know from speaking to Skodfather about kind of the same. Obviously, hopefully you know who he is. Speaking to Abs about kind of what he's been doing and what worked out well for him was, like you say, kind of making a lot of changes early that set yourself apart and gave you a few more advantages. I know Joe and I from the Centre Bounce, we kind of jumped on mid prices early, and it set us back because people might have 14 or 15 and we're stuck on 13 and a couple of mid prices. So getting those advantages early really, really helped to kind of set you up.
Yeah, definitely a Guns and Rookie, I think, with those buy rounds was the favourite approach. And that was sort of my thinking. It was to get out of, because I'd started 4 mid prices. I think I was Steele, Crouch, Wines, and one more who I've now forgotten. I guess it was Nick Martin in the midfield, actually. Yeah, Nick Martin. And so sort of just readjusting that, I sort of went the other way. I went from mid pricer into Guns and Rookies. So yeah.
Crazy to think that.
Okay. Yep.
Crazy to think that you're saying Steele and Crouch are mid prices, and
right,
we're talking about like a Jack Jordan and a Fife and these guys that are like 300k.
Yeah, I guess mid price as in midfield, sort of not that uber level.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a good point. They're certainly not true mid prices. Yeah. I was just going to add one more thing that did sort of help me, especially in the early rounds, was rookies on field. I don't think I lost any points from fielding the wrong rookie at the wrong time. So I can't really remember now, but there was sort of like Aaron Cadman against Harley Reid at that that West Coast game. Like got like 50 points there. And then I got Harley Reid's monster when sort of no one was really wanting to field him as much. So just been on the good side of the coin on both situations. And for rookies, I don't think I've lost any points, which is pretty crazy to think about by sort of fielding the wrong rookie, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Did you have Elliot Yeo?
No, I did it without Yo, which was quite painful at the start of the year. But sort of, I guess, got saved a little bit with him going down, which, which is why I didn't pick him in the first place. But yeah, he sort of did damage like really, really quickly. So it definitely hurt not owning him in that first part.
Yeah, no, I like it, mate. And it's a great journey, and it's probably something for all of us out there. You take lessons from everybody and go, okay, these are the things that the people who are up there have done right. And I think because it was different this year with the buys, and we sort of didn't know how that was going to play out, if the AFL, which I think they might do a bit of tinkering, but it might be a similar situation next year because we do know that they want that opening round kind of set up. We really hope it's the 9 games. But I think there were some lessons learnt, and it'll be interesting to see how people structure their sides differently. I know in my preseason content, I definitely did look at teams with none of the buy players, and it's a couple of people went that strategy and have done very well this year. So, there's plenty of lessons to be learnt, and obviously you've been a beneficiary of some of those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely will acknowledge a great deal of luck getting to this point. So,
mate, it's no luck at all, mate. It's all skill. We all claim it, mate. Yeah, that's great. All right, I'll throw it to some of these questions. We'll have a look out there, and you can listen along, Big J, and see if you want to put your input in a couple of them. Firstly, thank you, Jen, as always. Appreciate it. Great to have you on the show. I know you're interacting over there with Joe, so thank you so much, and I hope you're going well. in a kind of way, I hope your Pies don't win this week because I've tipped the Suns, and I'm actually quite shocked at how many people have actually gone Collingwood. I think it's about 82-83% in the overall tipping, which could be an interesting one because I think out of about what's in the ESPN tipping 900,000, I think I'm sitting 5,000 overall this week. So at the moment I'm on the Suns and the Cats. So if I get them, I'll be inside the top 1,000, which would be pretty cool. So yeah, I'm going out on a limb there. All right, let's get some super coach questions happening. So B James, thoughts on De Goey, please. Brought him in earlier this year and keen to have him back. Any thoughts about the Pies midfielder? I'll go with you first, Nath.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been keeping a close watch on those Pies boys because I do own Crisp. And so I feel like I do have a decent read on him. My thought is that he's going to go back to that 0% CBA at least this week. And he's going to play that more just forward role. Roam's up the ground, certainly, but I don't think he's going to be getting CBAs this week. So if you are keen on him, I'd probably wait a week if you can. Maybe you don't have that luxury. It's just sort of running out of time. I don't really like it personally, just with that injury history. Chances are he'll miss another game. I'm not sure how his match fitness is, like if that's why they're not giving him CBAs, sort of like, just resting him in that forward role a little bit first. Obviously, that's going to have a bit of an impact on his scoring. So, yeah, personally, I wouldn't be going there. But, at this time of year, a pod makes a big difference. So if you think he's going to have a big run home and you're playing for leagues or whatever it is, yeah, I can see some merit to it.
They do have 7 of 8 games in a row at the MCG, so it's not a bad draw. Big J, your thoughts there on the Collingwood midfielder?
How much is he before we start?
This is the problem. And I thought he might have been cheaper than this, but he's 480. So I already know I think you already know what my answer is going to be. But yeah, you go, mate.
Yeah, so there's no chance at all I would pick him up. I've got a full midfield at the moment, so I'm not going to look to downgrade him. I don't think he's got DPP, so he doesn't function for me as bench cover like someone like a Jai Simpkin, who I've picked up this week, does. And I think, as was said before, I think he's going to go a bit forward. They've struggled with McStay being out for the year, and now Cox is out for the year as well. And the Pies forward line is probably their weakest spot. So when a player comes back of his caliber, you throw him into the forward line and say, mate, just kind of hang out here for the whole season. So if you're not going to get CBAs, he probably kicks a couple of goals every game, but maybe you see a 70 or an 80, and that's probably not what we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And right in that same price range, you got Tom Green, who bounced back with the 153 last week. I know a few people a little worried there. A lot of love for Caldwell, who's got the dual position. Now the question is how long until Parrish comes back, but we're still looking probably 3 or 4 weeks at least. If you really wanted to take a risk, which I wouldn't, but you got Will Ashcroft coming back. But the better ones are even Stephen Caniglio. He's got a high break even, so you could even potentially hold off a week. But if you wanted the points, if he's back and firing in that midfield, he's a guy that can easily go 105, 110. And that's before we get into the obvious ones, which is Rosie's and Simpkin. So I think there's plenty of other options. And especially a few of those options are dual position, which come in very handy. So I wouldn't be going there myself, mate. And I think if you could get the cash and go up, that would be the better move. But there's nothing, as I said, having a pod this time of the year, but I wouldn't be going on maybe somebody who's not guaranteed to be spending that much time in the midfield. BJ?
For 40, I think it's like 45K more, you can get Laird in to your team.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It's like there's ways of doing it.
Get him instead. Yeah.
Yeah, there's Took, 27K more. Even it's like 60K more to get up to Walsh. So, and if you can't get up, that's fine. So then we've already said there's some options going down as well. So yeah, I'd leave that one alone. I appreciate the question, mate. But especially also the other thing is, as you guys said, Collingwood's their issue is probably their forward line and the scoring, and that's what they got to fix. Crisp is doing a great job in that midfield. Dacos, it's his midfield these days, so yeah, he can run through it. But the midfield's the thing keeping them together at the moment. So bringing De Goey in there, why would you upset the apple cart just to give him more midfield time when there's an obvious issue that they've got to fix? Even Lipinski's looked brilliant. It's probably the best career year Lipinski's had playing in that midfield. So I'd rather take a risk on somebody like Lipinski than I would De Goey.
Yeah, and forward line. Sorry, keep going.
I was just going to say, I think paying less money for a better player and position, I think Rosie would be the choice for me if you're looking at that sort of poddish, cheapo option.
No, so this will be a big question. I'll run through this because I know a few people are going to ask it, and we'll go through some of these other questions soon. All right, so let's talk about the obvious players. So we'll start off with Rosie. What are our thoughts on him? No, Big J, you start us off on this one, mate.
I really like Rosie. My only problem with him is Ken Hinkley. Is the tag, because I think he cops a few more tags compared to like a Butters, and I don't know what the body's like either. So obviously he's coming from the position where I think he started the season at like 620k, so you know the scoring potential's there. He's shown us last week the scoring potential's there, but for me at this crucial time in the season, I've seen some people running him M8, and it's like, mate, I just can't do it. I've gone like between him and Simpkin. And we'll talk about Simkin next, I guess, as well. But
yeah, so the question I've got, the one I've put up is from Bob the Builder. But sorry, mate, I'll jump in for 2 seconds. So Bob the Builder's put up. I know a couple other people have, but he's put up, should I pick up either Simpkin or Rosie this week? So
it's the lack of flexibility for me with a Rosie. Like, he can't cover multiple positions, and I've only got 3 or 4 trades, so I can't have him. That's basically it. If he was guaranteed to get DPP in 2 weeks, I might be swayed, but at the moment, like, it's the flexibility, I think, which is what I need. Coverage is king at the moment.
Yep. Nath?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It depends what your requirements are. Like, if you need a cheap M8 because that's all you've got left, really, I think he's absolutely fine to put in there. I don't really see anyone else at that price point. I guess you can sort of compare Tom Green if you don't have him, but chances are you do. So there's really not that many options for the budget M8. But yeah, if you are looking for a bit of cover, obviously it's not going to be as useful as a DPP. And so I can definitely see where Big J's coming from. I'd also throw Caldwell into that mix, I guess, if you're looking for sort of like a swing sort of F7 option. But I do really like Rosie. I'd back him in to do at least 105 from here if he's healthy. And I'm not sure where the tag goes. I feel like Butters cops more attention. And just because of the last few weeks is, some of that vision of him getting frustrated and things like that, I can see opposition coaches sort of picking up on that. Maybe not, flip a coin, I guess, at the end of the day, who gets it. But just because of how sort of well it has worked with Butters, maybe there's an argument to be said that actually Rosie benefits from that. So I really like Rosie. If you're really strapped for cash at M8, I'd be really happy to jump on.
Yeah, exactly. I think the other one, well, with regards to those two people, is a lot of people looking at trading Oliver and then moving him to Rosie or Simpkin, and that's where we're getting the M8 situation. And I'm in that exact situation right now where I can go, okay, original plan for me, and you would have not heard this, Big J, but I think Nath did when I was talking about my team on there. So I've got Oliver at M8. I've got still Rev, Clark. I've got to have Richard. So I don't have Dacos. He's the one I traded out a couple of weeks ago and turned him into Grundy and Goulden. So I was pretty happy with that. I think it was Dacos and Fife into Grundy and Goulden over that 2-week period. And yeah, obviously that's why I've moved up the rankings with those two. But now I've got this situation where I've got Oliver at M8 and Dacos not in my side. So I could potentially, not worry about the money situation, trade out Rev, put Oliver up to Dacos. That's my M8. Not really worry about having an M9 loophole, which is probably the obvious thing to do. Or what a lot of people obviously are looking at doing is saying, okay, I've got Clary in there. If I'm not going to trade him directly to Rosie or Simpkin, maybe I bring in a Rosie or Simpkin, more a Simpkin because of the dual position, make him M9. I can loophole, say, Oliver tonight and in a couple other games as well. The loophole works out. And then if he doesn't work out, I can always put Simpkin on field. If Oliver does work out, I can always move Simpkin to the forward line. That's what I guess some people are thinking. Where would you guys stand on? Do you think it's a direct swap Oliver to Simpkin or a Rosie? Or would you prefer the M9 version and just back the fact that Oliver might come good at some point over these 7-8 weeks? Well, you're thinking about that, Big J, while you're driving.
Sure.
Nath can go.
No. I'm happy to go first. I just let him go first.
Mate.
I think there's a bit of risk holding him at M8, Oliver, that is, just because he has that potential to really sort of be a gaping hole in your side if he doesn't find some form. Like, even if he gets back to his sort of like 90s, 80s, high 80s that he's done the last 4 or 5 weeks, that's just not enough at that slot. Leading points to, I guess I've got Tom Green at M8, for example. You'd expect sort of a 100 average at least. I don't know. I personally just can't see Clary going above 100, especially with Petrarca out. I think Petrarca out hurts him rather than it helps him, particularly when his sort of match fitness isn't quite there. His low time on ground, I think, is a really tough watch. It's quite annoying. And yeah, with the tag threats that he's got coming up, there's Brisbane this week. Does he get Berry? I'd say yes. Maybe Sheed even if he comes back. I'm not sure. I wouldn't feel comfortable fielding Oliver at M8, the rest of the way through. I dumped him a few weeks ago. I'm not sure I'd feel great about actually changing Oliver to Simpkin, like for an M8, but I'd probably feel all right about doing it to Rosie, just bank some cash. If you dropped Oliver down to Rosie, how would you get Dacos, Swiz?
Yeah, I've worked out I can just do it if I go this week, but I need Dacos not to go stupid this week. So I'd have to do it. I think I worked it out. I'd have to do Oliver down to Rosie. I might be even. It wouldn't matter even if I went Simpkin, because the fact that Dacos would come in as my 23rd, so Dacos would come on field, and then Simpkin just becomes the loophole. So it probably doesn't make a difference either way I go there. But I could do one of them, and then I think Jai Clark goes down. And as long as Rev isn't sub tonight, which would change everything, and this is why I've got to wait until final teams before I make my final decision. But if Rev isn't sub, then next week I could go Rev to Sean Makers via my loopholes that I've got, because I think I've got Campbell Gray sitting in there at FA, and I can move him to 4 line, move someone up. And then I could go Joe Richards up to Dacos. So I do have the ability to do that. And then it leaves me like no cash, but I can as long as I said, Dacos doesn't go like 150 this week, I can perfectly do it. Knowing my luck, Dacos goes 150 and it just screws up my entire plans. So there is that food for thought of doing that. Which is under consideration, and even if it's this Rosie, as you said, who I think could easily go 105 if he's not getting attention, 110 on the run home because he's done before. I know Ricky's asked here about Jai Simpkin's uptick, especially with Wardlaw out for another couple of weeks now with a concussion, and I could see Simpkin going definitely over the next couple of weeks, maybe a 100 to 110, no problems. As then what happens after that, and that's if he doesn't, if he can get through the entire rest of the season. And Big J, you'd probably know that best as a Roos supporter. Simpkin's body, can be a bit up and down. So there is some risk in there. And obviously that's the problem having him at M8 versus say an M9, where you can potentially, even if he gets a 1 weeker, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and that's why I've got him as coverage between forward and defense versus a position on field, because I think he'll have decent games. And, if a Primo gets tagged, they're probably just going to score a sub 100. And at the worst, Simpkin is probably going to score a comparable price anyway. So, you just pretend your Primo's out for a week, he got tagged, and that's why Simpkin scores there. So it's not terrible. Going back to the Oliver, for me, I understand why people brought in Oliver, but for me, it was never, ever, ever. And I think that choice is definitely paying dividends for me at the moment. He doesn't look fit. He doesn't look interested. Something's obviously wrong. And, Petrarca's out, but as was said before, he kind of covers what would be the tag. You've got Oliver by himself in this Melbourne midfield, and they just I just don't rate it at the moment. You know what I mean? So I would be jumping off. I think for you, Swiz, how many trades do you have left?
I think I've got about 4. So it's the situation of I can burn through all my trades and set up with the 23, or I save a couple and just go straight Oliver to Dacos and then not have the loophole player, which is fine because you still got some rookies there that are playing that could cover, and then just see what opens up on the run home.
What I would do for your team then is I would look to, if you've got 4 trades left, I would look to sideways Oliver to a Primo. So like a Simpkin or a Rosie, and then have in the back of my mind, okay, once a Richards, once all my guys like a Breville or whatever mature in price a bit more, I can go one up, one down and get another primo in and then finish with one trade as cover. I think
and one of the players I actually left field considering, because obviously I was talking about, not having Dacos in there after I moved him on for the premiums, is actually maybe fade the fact that Dacos, and as much as that would hurt, like can potentially hurt because he's on a, we know what he can do. But in saying that, it only, the fact that I'm that far behind, if from leagues it hurts potentially. But then if he does get another 1 week injury, things happen, whatever, the fact if you don't own him, and that's why obviously I had the rankings increase over the last couple of weeks, you can get that leg up on everyone else because we know everybody else has him. And if that is looking at, well, originally I was considering Yo, but now he could potentially be out because of the family issues. If there's another defender there who's got the potential to actually go quite well and be that loophole guy. And I know this question, I'm going to put it up. I've had it from a couple of people. We'll put up Greg Wilson's thoughts on Rivers with his mid-time and scoring now that Petrarca's out. So Rivers the last 2 weeks, 111, 131. We've known this guy's got the potential for 450. I could potentially turn Oliver into Rivers for now and then look at still getting in another player at some point, even if it isn't Dacos, I could still potentially get a 23rd player in and have Rivers then as my loophole player. So what are our general thoughts on, I guess, Rivers anyway? Because I know he's not the only one to ask about him, who definitely seems to be the one that's getting a little bit of Petrarca time. And now with Salem out this week as well, I think there's plenty of points for a player like Rivers.
I really like Rivers, and I think the Melbourne midfield has a lot of points to share around at the moment. No Salem, no Petrarca, as you say. There's probably an extra 100 points in there just waiting to be taken up. Like the max score has to hit to someone. Oliver's obviously not performing, so someone's getting the points there. If it's Rivers, it's Rivers. Like you say, the last 2 weeks worth of scoring has showed that like the potential's there, right? He can do those scores. So yeah, I like the pick. Definitely left field and a much cheaper option. I think one of those super pod picks that, could end up working really well for you.
Nath?
I agree. Only thing I sort of query is the lack of history, I guess. I'm pretty big on history. So I wouldn't feel great about getting, Oliver to Rivers could actually not even net you any points. That's the risk. The same sort of role, both 80% CBA mids. I guess, Rivers has got a better preseason under his belt, so could do worse. I think still though, I'd prefer Rosie over Rivers. So if I'm just tossing up between the two, but yeah, he's 0.5% owned, so definitely not terrible. And North midfield isn't actually a terrible match. Isn't a super easy matchup, I should say. So, it's not like that 131's, some kind of inflated score necessarily.
No.
So it does bode well. But I'd say big risk, just sort of unproven. And that's what puts me off if I was.
And that's the hard thing. But I was kind of looking at, like, Rosie probably actually isn't going to go up a huge amount this week. I think at worst he's probably going up 18k, and there is a world where I could just go Oliver it's slightly down to Rivers and then just go bring Rosie in next week, or if Canelio absolutely dominates and shows his back, but let's just say it's Rosie, and then just Rosie becomes their mate, and then Rivers now becomes my loophole dude. So there's ways around that. So, and that's even like Stewie Mack here asking us thoughts on Clark to Rivers to facilitate buying Rankin and pushing Jackson Kernell to F6, F7. So again, this is a person who's trying to get that 23rd player in, so Rivers as your 23rd player. If there's a way to facilitate that, and as we're saying, as such a pod, I don't mind that as much, especially if that cash saved is actually facilitating you bringing in a guy like Rankin who potentially is, F6 for the way, definitely top 6 forward on the run home.
Rivers doesn't have DPP, does he? He's only defender.
No.
Yeah, that would be my only negative with having him as a 23rd, because like I was saying before, coverage is key. If it was like a McKercher that had defensive and then midfield, 100%, advocate for everybody. Tom, Dick, and Harry, your grandma, jump on him, but that no DPP really hurts.
Yeah, and that's the problem there, because then you've kind of got, it only works, I think, more if, like, depending on how many games Melbourne, I haven't looked at it completely, how many games they play early, which I don't think they play. There's a couple of weeks where they do play on the Friday night, but I think the rest of them are on Saturdays. So in a perfect world, if they're playing a few more earlier games, you could definitely just loophole Rivers as your D7, but then move one of your other dual position players, let's just say it's Martin or Fisher, and work it that way. So there is ways to do it. But at the same time, as you said, it's much easier if your players have already got that dual position, because those games where they are playing later, you can move them around.
Yeah, like if Rivers starts popping out 120s or 110s every week and frees up Nick Martin to then become your defensive midfielder swing, like 100%, it's worked out well for you. Do the pick, no dramas, but there's just a lot of ifs.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll get through a few more of these questions. I really do appreciate, guys, that you are sending through. Let's go, and I apologize if I've missed any. Let's scroll back, actually, because I don't like missing some of these people. What's Kai said here? Kai's gone, I think this year in both AF and Supercoach has proven that Primos playing opening rounds aren't really valuable, but the mid prices on the rookies are huge. Definitely agree with that. Kev, as always, thank you so much for jumping on, mate. One day you actually put a question, mate, about your team. No, you do, mate. I love having you on here. Jack said, hey, lads, how are we? Who's your best and worst start for the year? He's saying mine was starting Holmes at M6 at 440, and that, I guess, would be your best, and your worst was starting Sandbowl, Berry, and following George, yes. And as much as I love George, so that there is that little Adelaide bias there. So I personally try not to be biased with my Tigers, but I was this year with Short, who was by far my worst. I tried to avoid my Richmond players, but did get sucked in there. So I think that's by far been my personal worst. Glad you jumped on Holmes. I did write about him in the preseason. I think that's the one thing I've got right, except for the fact that I didn't actually start him. And then for me, I think my big one was that last second swap. I think I took Stewart out just before his game and brought Sheasel in. So I was pretty stoked about that. And I probably nailed most of my rookies, like having Comben and Buku and those sort of guys. They've been the positives. It's more been the fact I've traded out a few rookies early who were on the chopping block, and then they come out and score like 100. Even last week, I trade Comben out because his break even's like 97, and he comes out and scores like 109 or something stupid like that. So that's for me. I'll go you, Big J, because Nath has kind of touched on what he's done bad and good this year, which has been a lot of good, obviously. Big J, what about you, mate?
Like bad starting pick. I think the team overall, too much money spread out and not going enough guns and rookies. Like I think I had almost 1 to 2 mid prices on every line, which meant that I started like 11 primos and not kind of the 13, which I think was the right way to go. I think probably not having a Tom Green early really, really hurt. Like I love Tom.
We've lost you there, mate. So he's probably driving through a dodgy area.
Potential was there.
Here we go. You're back, mate. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah. You always thought, like, with Tom Green, the potential was going to be there. So it, Tom Green was probably the worst starting pick. I did start Berry, like someone else was saying before. And
same.
Yeah, just kind of a lot of wasted trades early that I would have loved to have now. And I think the money management helped me quite a lot in terms of fixing those wasted trades, but like missing out on opportunities to rise up the ranks, which was a big thing for me.
Yep. I've put up Joe's comment, Nath season, 5% luck, 80% skill, 15% concentrated power of will. Love it. All right. Okay, Steve, what do you got for us here, mate? Thanks, Steve. Thoughts on trading Steele or Took to Rosie at M8? Personally, not loving this at the moment, but let's see what else this says. And Clark to a 102k rookie next week can finally get my F6 or D6. We'll have 550 plus in the bank to upgrade Fraser or Richards. Okay, so I have had similar questions about this going, should I trade some, like I think one of the questions I had online, I think it was Adrian, I do appreciate you DMing me. He was talking about potentially trading like a Dawson. I know I've had people ask me about Steel Took. Is it worth trading one of those premiums who is probably your sort of M6 range, M677, down to a Rosie, if it means getting in another premium in another line and upgrading a rookie?
I think definitely.
You go, Nath.
Yeah, sure. I think definitely it is worth doing if it's the right player, but I don't think Steele is a trade out. I think with his run home, he'll be absolutely fine off the bye. I guess Miller to Rosie, if I sort of had to do that move there, would be the one. I'm just looking at Miller's fixture coming up. Obviously, he's had some pretty poor scores recently as well. Like that Essendon game got scaled up immensely. But he does have a pretty decent run, going forward. So I don't think it's a must trade by any means. If you've in a vacuum, I would say don't do it. But because that means unlocking a final primo, and it looks like you have a good chunk of cash to get a proper primo at that price, it could be worth it, because I do think Miller to Rosie will be even at the worst, if not Rosie potentially outperforming. So if I were you, Stephen, I'll be doing Miller to Rosie in order to facilitate that. If there's any other way you can get a final primo, though, I'd also try to flesh out those options as well.
Yeah. And I'll extend that question, Big J, because Adrian's he could just go Fife straight out to Fife straight out to Mackay, or could he go Dawson down to Rosie, which would mean him getting a much better forward premio? So it's an extension of Stephen's question there.
I think the forward line's an interesting one, because we probably have 4 to 5 guys that are locked in as must-haves or as top guys that are going to be the big scorers every week. But then you might have a Rankin, you might have a Curnow, you might have a Jai Sink, and those kind of players who could fit in as that F6. So I think there's a bit of flexibility there. I probably wouldn't go Mackay, though. And I think last week really showed why. Like, he was taking number 2 ruck and trying to kick some goals. And I know Joe and I have flagged on the show, hey, look, that's a really good role for him. But he just doesn't have the free kick capacity, doesn't have the mobility around the ground like a Curnow does. So he's missing out on a lot of points. Going back to the original question, though, there's like 9 weeks to go in Supercoach. And obviously everyone wants to get the highest rank they can, beat their friends, do whatever, right? But I think the big thing is enjoying the game as well. And if you're sick of seeing Jack Steele having to move forward, try and tag, not run, the same with the Touk Miller, the same with these guys, get rid of them. You do not need, 9 weeks worth of heartache and being angry and not wanting to watch football because you've got some crappy player that you didn't offload. And that's why, like 2 weeks ago, I got rid of Touk Miller on his bye. And it's turned out that's the right move. But it was more, I hate seeing this guy. He always struggles to try and get 100. The ball's going past him. It's more of that versus like purely just Supercoach points.
Yeah, and obviously we've talked about this also on the show before about some people are, what would you say, playing for leagues. So they're in a different kind of situation on how they're playing stuff. So they might be looking at matchups and stuff where a lot of our questions are more tailored to overall. But yeah, there is a couple slight differences for people who are playing the game differently. So yeah, all that does come into account depending on your situation, but we usually do focus as if you're playing it overall. And we've lost him again. All right, I'm going to remove you for a minute, Big J. I'm sure you'll be back in a moment. All right, HTC. Hey, boys, apart from Curnow, who was the best forward for under 450Ks? It's a pick from a bad bunch, but they'll be my 23rd. Thinking Jeremy Cameron, Bolton, or Baker. So, yeah, that's kind of an interesting one.
I did look at Jeremy Cameron last week for my own purposes. I don't think Hawkins going down is going to help him, though. I think he's going to have to play deeper now. So I'd probably stay away from Cameron. Don't like Bolton, personally, or Baker. So either of those Richmond guys are a bit too up and down for me. At that price, I'm assuming you don't have Simpkin. I'd say forward option Simpkin. Is Curnow under 450?
No, he's 457, which is the sad part. Yeah.
Curnow. Oh, sorry. Apart from Curnow, I missed that. Yeah, I'd probably be saying Simpkin. What is he? 400. So yeah.
Yeah, Simpkins of those guys. I wouldn't be touching the Richmond boys as much as we're talking contracts for Baker. Jeremy Cameron, if you really had to, if you already had Simpkin, I guess. The one that had now, this is more a defender option because I know you've been. So actually, we'll continue on the forwards because I know I had another question about a cheaper defender. But I'm just having a look if there's anybody else left field under 450k that we could potentially. It's amazing that some of these players are just over. The only other one was Lipinski that I kind of mentioned if you really want to go something left field, just because I kind of like the kind of role that he's been playing in there, but I prefer them to a couple of the options that they obviously have brought up. But yeah, outside of that, it's the bottom of the barrel there.
One thing to say about Simpkin as well, like you can ask me some North Melbourne questions, happy to answer them, whatever. But his break even is so low that if you don't pick him up this week, he's going to punish you by not owning him. Like break even of -11. I think he's projected if he scores an 80, which I assume he's going to score more than 80. Just the position that he's playing, the way that he's going, that kind of thing. He's going to jump up 40k. So it's going to be a Curnow type situation again for a lot of people. It's partly why I haven't gone. Originally, I was going to go Steele to Dunkley and then try and grab a Simpkin next week, but I just can't afford it. So maybe something for people to factor in as well.
The other part you've got to consider with Simpkin and Rosie, and obviously you're asking here HTC about a forward, but so Simpkin's finals draw for Supercoach. So he plays my boys 21, the Eagles 22, Doggies 23, and Hawthorn 24.
Not bad.
That's not a bad draw at all if you're looking for a 23rd person who to loophole. Because there's games there, even with Wardlaw back. Like North could still get another injury for someone else. Like Simpkin could get an injury. We can't predict that sort of stuff. But if in any of those games he could potentially play midfield and pull out a 120, 130, which for those people who own, that's going to be obviously huge. And then we compare that to Rosie, who we do know like Port have quite a decent draw starting off of St Kilda this week, depending on how who Winghagen goes to. But it's sort of a bit more mixed because come the Supercoach finals, even though they do have Richmond coming up, the first week of Supercoach finals, Port Adelaide do play Sydney. So that's probably as rough as you can get at the moment, even being at Adelaide Oval. The Swans are just chewing up so many points. And then it, opens up a little bit, but the Ds at the G still aren't going to be easy. The showdown is always going to be a fiery matchup. And then they play Freo away. So it's not like there's going to be a huge amount of like free points for Rosie just to smash. And on the only good thing is those games could be close. So if he's getting points late, he might get the scaling in there. But yeah, that's not going to be just like I'm going to able to feast on those games compared to a Simpkin. So and that's where like the Blues, where Curnow's been way more important because again, Carlton's draw through that Supercoach finals period is why everybody kind of really got him. They're Collingwood, who we know can give more points to midfielders, but they also have the Hawks, West Coast, and St Kilda, and those three teams could be. We know they're out of contention anyway, West Coast and St Kilda, but you always see these last couple of rounds. Some clubs will troll new players, troll different things, put people in for early surgeries. I would much prefer to own one of those Carlton players who, or as we said, say maybe a Simpkin, but that is also a little bit of the risk too, because what if North goes, if Clarkson says, okay, last 3 or 4 rounds, maybe we're going to try a couple of different guys in the midfield, and does that maybe go the other way? But I think just the way they're projecting and the fact that North haven't won, well, they've only won the one game, they might want to continue to try to finish off on a bit of a high. So I think there's less risk to that than compared to some of these other teams.
Yeah, I'd just raise one more name, and that would be Harley Reid. It's very left field, but he's pretty much right on that price. There's the only downside he's going to lose a little bit more cash this week, and he has a Windhager tag most likely in 3 weeks. But he does play 5 of his games of the run home at Optus, where he's got a massive average. And that St Kilda game where he got suspended, he was actually on track for a 150. Sort of things went south in that second half, of course, with the tag. But he's that type of player who really has a massive ceiling. I don't think there are many guys at that price point who can do anything like that, aside from Curnow. So that would be just one more name to raise in this discussion.
Jeremy Cameron does need to at least be looked at because it has a decent record against the Bombers. They do have Mackay this year, so they've got a couple of better matchups for him. And but the Hawks after that, Geelong. The big one is from round 20 to 24. Geelong's draw is again ridiculously good. North Melbourne down in Tassie, so they'll probably fill their boots there. Sorry, Big J, but don't see. I went down, I think, for that one 2 years ago, and they absolutely slaughtered them there. Then they play the Crows at home, so good luck, Adelaide. And then they play Freo, St Kilda, and then they finish with West Coast at Geelong. So Geelong are in that situation where, because early in the year I would have thought maybe it's not such a great pick because they were flying and they could be managing players. Now the fact that they're kind of back in that mix, they're going to have to win games and win games well. And I would I'm be happy to back Jeremy Cameron versus a North Melbourne or West Coast late in the season to absolutely fill his boots. So if that is that 23rd player you're looking at, somebody like him could be a big point of difference. I know we're going back a long time ago, but I think it was about 10 years ago or so. Nick Riewoldt, I think his last game, he might have scored like 200 points. I know Jonathan Brown had a couple big games late in his career. Matthew Richardson was the same. So getting on some of these key forwards like Ruckman come into their own late in the season. And if they've got matchups against weakened teams where they're just getting fed the ball all day, that can be the big difference in the Supercoach Grand Final or prelim final if you can loophole somebody like that who nobody's going to own. So yeah, just a bit of food for thought for you there, mate.
I think you're going to underestimate North Melbourne's defense in a couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, no, I'm not, mate. Sorry, mate. I'm not. Mate, you're performing well, but at the same time, it's those sort of games, Geelong are just going to fill their boots. That's what they do. That's the situation. All right, I've talked about that one. What's Joe Man saying here? Kynan Jones should be getting some more of those points, but Goodwin is tanking.
Agree.
Yeah, I think you mean Kynan Brown, mate. But yeah, that was an interesting decision. A few people talking about Brown. All right, Global. Now here we go, because I was talking about this on Facebook, and I'm glad you brought this up because I know Supercoach Scout was talking about this to me and wanted to kind of talk about team sheets. Thoughts on Sam De Koning? Now we've only got the one sort of the game that we've able to focus on, and that's what a few of the comments I think were on Facebook. Like, it would have been better to sort of see a bigger sample size, but looked fantastic in the ruck. Obviously his brother did beat him, but and now the Cats, apparently Stanley and who's the other one down there, the young fella?
Conway.
Yeah, Conway. Both were available this week. They've decided to go the same. Now they have named Blitz halves in the ruck and not De Koning at the moment, but then they did that last week, and then De Koning actually did play ruck. 350k defender. So again, it's not the dual position, which is a bit annoying. But if you were looking for potentially a D7, or if you already had McKercher sitting there at like a D7, could you potentially, and you had the ability to go a cheap 24th, could you swing, say, McKercher into your midfield and maybe get a De Koning as your 23rd? Is that somebody worth the risk?
No, I'm not going to.
Straight out no for Big J. Like it, no problems.
I don't know.
Is this the sort of move that it would get you considering it all?
It would definitely, if I knew the role would hold. If I knew he was playing full time ruck, I think at D6 that's fine. I don't know if it does. That's sort of the question. So you'd be taking a punt. I can sort of see the merit with them persisting with him. Like, they see what his brother's doing. They give him a bit of exposure in this back half. I don't hate it. I always love a cheeky pod option. I guess the question is, what else could you be doing at that slot? So he's saying I could bring him in at D7. Charlie Curnow. Is that, I'm assuming?
Yes, I'm going. This would be overtaking Charlie, or going both Charlie and Sam for Oliver and Sexton. Now that all depends, I guess. If like the whole, I wouldn't be bringing him as obviously a D6, but if you've got the ability to bring, say, a DeConning a D7 as that sort of 23rd and move and still able to move players around, I don't mind that kind of at all as a real risky play. There's obviously, if he goes back to the back line, you're going to have problems. But then if he's D7 anyway, all you need him is to bob up and play ruck. You might not need him to do it every week, but if he does it 3 or 4 times and that helps you win your matchups, well, anytime he's playing ruck, it's going to be a massive pod for you. Because so many teams, I think, if we were playing each other this week, would probably have sort of 16 players similar. And I think that's similar to most players. Some games, I think Al Patton and Tim Mitchell played each other the other day and had 20 of the 22 similar on field. So they were literally playing down to 2 players and a captain VC option, which was different. So if you've got the ability to go somebody really left the field as your D7, who you could loophole, and this all comes down to how early Geelong are playing. But we've just talked about that draw. So do Geelong go, okay, we've got some easy matchups here. We may as well, Bailey Williams, for example, in the ruck. Is it worth playing Stanley, or do you may as well go, well, we're going to probably win this game anyway. Let's put the Conning up against him. And if he's got the potential to go 120 in that game, all of a sudden you've got what would become a D6 that week going 120. You're probably ahead of everybody else's D6.
Look, as a Supercoach selection, I say no, but 100% what you're saying, Swiz, about Geelong's problem for a very long time.
And he's actually said here, Sexton is my 23rd player, but go on.
Geelong's big problem for a very long time is not having a good ruckman. They've struggled so much, forever. It's always been cool. We'll try and get a replacement guy. We'll try and have a guy for a couple of weeks, couple of years, but never really had that next guy. That's why they've been after Goldie for so long. Why there was talks about Sean Darcy in the past and a whole bunch of other players. So I can see where the experiments are coming from. Obviously, DeConning and his brother are pretty much the same. I'm going to say they're the same body, but they're basically the same body type of player. So you can see when one's working at Carlton, it's going to work at Geelong. But in terms of Supercoach scoring, I just don't see it working out that well for him. If you're going to pick him at the moment, that's a no from me, really.
Yeah,
I just raised one thing. He does have if he is playing ruck, Geelong have the second easiest ruck matchup season long for the end. So something to think about.
All right, Kyle. Go Simpkin this week and hope that Freejar and Harrison can outbreak even score. Gordon or Dunkley, and then grab Simpkin next week. Okay, so he's saying, do I get Simpkin this week? Which you're saying, if you're going to get Simpkin, you've got to get him this week because of the break even.
He's just going to jump up.
I think that's just the way you've got to do it, and then go the other way and worry about your Gordons and that. As much as it'd probably be killing you not having Gordon. And actually, that's something I haven't discussed with my own side at the moment, but it's good to actually talk about because I know it'll come up. Is vice captain options? May as well have a little discussion with that. Now, and that's because it reminded me about Gordon. I think there's a couple obvious ones tonight. And then I do like also Gordon tomorrow. Big J, where are you leaning towards for your vice captain and then into your captain, mate?
Currently, I've got Zane Dorco as my vice captain. I wish I had a Dunkley because, Dunkley's going to be fantastic. Neil's going to cop the Neil Bullen tag, I'm pretty sure. So we've got Dorco in there. If he doesn't work out, I'm leaning into Houston. I think St Kilda definitely give up a lot of points to halfbacks, and he should be in for a good run. So hoping that the VC works out okay. But if it doesn't, I think I'm leaning into a Houston.
Yep. Nath?
Yeah, I've been tossing up, Zorko VC. The thing with Zorko VC is it sort of hamstrings you a little bit if it doesn't work out. You sort of have to take just a straight C on Dacos. They talked a little bit about his role changing. I don't think it does. Merritt, could get some attention. I just don't feel great about a failed VC Zorko. That's the only thing. Whereas I'd feel a lot safer about, say, a Dacos into a Merritt or something like that. Just 2 shots at a 120. I think I'm leaning towards Zorko into Dacos, though, for me at this stage.
Yep, I don't mind that at all. And I think Dacos is a bit of quite a popular choice. I know a few others were tossing up. I know we were talking about in one group chat, Charlie Curnow. The only problem is he plays so late, but that's a massive risk. Houston is one, but again, there is some risk there because, you just a half-backs, but we know, as you said, how well half-backs do against St Kilda. Like they've been taking the absolute mickey all year.
Yep.
So that's a hard one to ignore. I think the most popular choice tonight will be Gawn. If this was at the MCG, I'd 100% lock in Gawn. The fact it's at the Gabba, I don't want any part of it. Where I'm more likely, I do like the fact that Zorko, because he's averaged at the Gabba, especially his last 3 games, he's averaging like 130 or something. He's got 3 scores above 150 this year, off the top of my head, at the Gabba. So it's hard to ignore. And the fact that Melbourne have given up some decent points to half-back flankers as well. So, I'm finding it hard to ignore that. Yeah, what's he going at the Gabba? He's got that 160 against Richmond, had the 140 against St Kilda, and 160 against Gold Coast. So, and also had a 130 against Geelong. So I'm finding it incredibly hard to ignore Zorko tonight because I think he can just run around and do whatever he wants. But in saying that, you're talking about that reliable person, Goulden at home. The few weeks that I've owned him, he's been pretty handy. He's already put up a 130, 157 and a 151. So he's in absolute ripping form. And I think they're going to be no trouble against Freo this week. So I feel like, that's not like, I can't see Freo putting pressure on Goulden, because if you're doing that, then you're just running around, letting Warner and Heaney run around and do their thing as well. So it'll probably be just straight matchup, and they're going to kind of nearly have to back themselves. So, and the Swans at home have just been tearing up teams. So, there is a real part of me that kind of wants to do that, but there's also a part of me that just goes to back, say, a Goulden in as like the captain if Zorko was the foul.
Joe can let me know if I'm reading DFS wrong, but I'm fairly sure Brisbane like a very, very hard matchup against opposition rucks. So maybe Gawn's done well the last couple of times, but Brisbane just in general, Big O, will match or will just destroy opposition rucks. Like the guy is so strong and really tough.
The thing that blows Gawn's averages out of the way, apart from the fact those a couple of MCG games against the Lions, but he was up against Darcy Fort. So I think he had the 200 and something, maybe the 140 both times Big O didn't play. Where Big O's record at the Gabba, I don't know if Gawn's even tunned in his last 3 or 4 against Big O at the Gabba.
Which is why I'm a bit like, hey, watch out.
I can, and that's probably a big one for the ones in the top 1%, because I think that's the one everyone will go to. Like this week, the highest VC for will be Gawn, no doubt, once we see the game close. So if he can put up only like a 100, 110, which I think the other part to it is, even though there might be extra points, he doesn't have Petrarca to hit down to. So it's really relying on Viney and Oliver to get those hit outs to advantage. And Brisbane got probably one of the best defensive midfielders in the game, in Dunkley. So Dunkley will just rove to Gawn all night.
I have a bit of a question for you guys. Normally every week there's a game or two that we see as being big blowout games where you have to pick your captain from this because they're going to go massive. I'm not sure if there's really any of those type of games this week. Maybe a Carlton versus Richmond, but outside of that, it doesn't scream to me, hey, pick whatever vice captain you want because Goulden's going to go 300 against West Coast's midfield. You know what I mean? Is there any other games like that this week where you guys can see, hey, it should be 3 points and we have to pick the players?
Oh, we're getting pumped. And actually, I probably should sit there and say more people should be picking Walsh. But Nath.
I think that's a good call. Yeah, that's Richmond Carlton. I think tonight could also threaten to be a blowout as well. That's, I think, also what tips me towards Zorko. Him sort of just chilling at half or high half back and then pushing up, getting lots of inside 50s, intercepts, just chilling at that sort of center line when they've got that they've got that ball locked in. I can just see Zorko just chipping around back and forth, which he's done particularly. It sort of has that feel of that Gold Coast game where he was just sort of running around unmanned, doing whatever he wanted. And that's sort of what tips me towards him. So I think tonight could be a blowout with, how depleted Melbourne are looking. So that would probably be the only one. But yeah, it's a good call. I don't see too many blowouts on the horizon this week.
Oh, see, I nearly think the opposite. I think Sydney Freo potentially could get ugly. Like Freo looked all right against the Suns at home, and I think that Freo reminded me very much of the Suns at the moment. And they look good at home, but then away, like it's only 2 weeks ago, they got absolutely pumped by the Bulldogs at Marvel. So yeah, Freo, much different team when they're playing at home, when they're playing away, and we know what the Swans do at home. So I think there could be, I think there's a little bit of false security there because of the job Fremantle did on Melbourne, but Melbourne we know aren't great at the moment. So yeah, I can see the Swans having a bit of a day out, and wouldn't surprise me if that game ends up being 10 goals, and we probably all just turn around and put it and go, okay. Afterwards, we go, oh, yeah, well, that's just Freo away, Sydney at home, as expected. But leading at the moment, I think a few people are like, oh, yeah, I can see this being reasonably close, where I actually don't think it's going to be close at all. I think I agree with for tonight. The one that we really probably should be talking about is Big J's mob versus the Doggies, because as much as the North have been showing some better form, I think what's the average margin for the Doggies versus North over the last sort of 4 or 5 years? I feel like it's 45, 50 points, something like that. They have done extremely well. Might even be more.
But
I think
no Bruce anymore.
Yeah, no Bruce.
Bruce is gone. That's it.
And I think the big issue is everybody's going, well, Bont's still maybe 50-50 not playing. Is he going to play forward? And when they went through this situation, was it 2 weeks ago against the Dockers, and he went, 160? So, is this just the fact that, he goes forward, so then Phillips goes to somebody else like a Treloar, and then Bont just sort of wanders around, gets up to the ground whenever he does? Is it a case that they do potentially sub him out early, but is this just posturing again from the Dogs? Like we always say, we don't trust Bevo, and then all of a sudden, this is who knows what goes down there. It wouldn't surprise me if Bont comes out and kicks 6 either.
Yep. He probably deserves some more consideration, actually, just looking at his recent form. The only time he's gone under 130 in the last 7 weeks has been when he's been full-on tagged against GWS and Brisbane. Apart from that, he's been ridiculously insane. So I'd ask you, Big J, do you think Phillips actually gets the job on Bont, or is that a matchup that just doesn't work?
I think the height difference is probably the biggest thing between the two. Like, Phillips isn't the tallest guy. Bont's obviously that 195 centimeter type player. But to say that he's not going to get attention in our defense either is pretty farcical. I don't know if you know the stats on someone like a Comben, but even like an Aiden Core has been doing quite well. And we've been negating a little bit. Like, the games have been a lot closer, a lot more competitive.
Yeah, for sure.
If Griffin Logue was back, even worse. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be free reign, or at least I hope it's not going to be free reign against North Melbourne like we've seen in the past.
The only issue with that, if he was playing forward, is Norton and Ugal are getting Comben and
and I think Darcy's back this week, right?
And Lob is in the team as well.
Yeah,
so
that's right. So that's stretching. Yeah, so they've gone the full tall attack to really stretch, because obviously we know North are a little bit more undermanned for size down there. Comben Core been great. Archer played fantastic last week against Fringe, but again it's that smaller sort of 190 forward. They've obviously, if the ball hits the deck, just quietly, I don't mind Sheasel. If he's just picking up loose ball and stuff like that, he's probably the one again. Sheasel will probably come out of this game and go 140, and we all go, there he is. Like he's been my captain in an AFL Fantasy Dynasty League, I think the last 3 or 4 weeks. And every week I just pick up 120, 125 off him and go, you beauty, I'll take that. Which obviously AFL Fantasy, different scoring, but that's huge for AFL Fantasy. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Sheasel just runs around and does his thing, especially with Warlord missing this week too. And the Dogs aren't going to tag. So I think a lot of people are ignoring that game, and that could be, especially the fact that I think Dacos is after that. If you've got Dacos after, you could definitely go one of the Bulldogs or North as a real difference. And if Zorko wasn't playing tonight, I'd probably be leaning towards that.
Yeah, if Zorko wasn't playing today, I think someone from this game, mate. I just looked at the lineups, and like you say, there's a lot of talls, but hopefully North's not too bad. I do project Sheasel not to play halfback though. I think he's going to play that midfield up.
I do
up.
too, but I just think if the
Absolutely,
ball's down around there, like he's good enough just to pick up the loose ball, and there's going to be plenty of ball to
If
pick up.
Wardlaw wasn't injured, I was almost going to put our tips in for North Melbourne.
Big call.
All right, Ricky, what do we got here for us, mate? Sinclair over Merritt as a pod move.
I love Sinclair. I think Sinclair's fantastic.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a little bit worried with the Sinclair just because St Kilda haven't been winning many games, that they're going to have to move pieces around, which usually means that a Sinclair goes back. But I think with Schoenmaker doing well, Nazaya hopefully back in the team, it's going to mean that he's going to play more midfield because Still needs something. Still has nothing. Like there's no players there that are helping him every week. And Henry's out for a while. Crouch is out for a while. He needs something. So I think Sinclair's going to be fun. I think they play one game that's not at Marvel for the rest of the season. Like it's bonkers. So pick him. It's good. DPP as well.
Which we love it. Here we go, Kev. I have Oliver too. Listening to you guys trying to decide what to do, which I think a few other people are. Definitely things. What have we got here, Jack? Thanks guys for the lad. Also picking up Lohman for 150k is a great move. Well done. I think Supercoach DR was huge on that. Obviously being a great Lions man, so well done to him because he was spruiking him. So well done.
Been a great rule.
Corey, and the other one too, which I'm happy to also hold my hat on this, but I did trade him out too early. I think I said maybe round 2 or 3. D'Ambrosio might be the biggest cash cow for the year, and I think he's close now. So I love making statements and then not backing myself in that, but he has been absolutely awesome for those who have held him, and there's still quite a lot of the competition that do have him. So well done, but just not as many in that top 1%, but they're closing. All right, Corey, thanks, mate. Thoughts about Hutchinson to Logan Evans this week? Play Flanders back, and Martin mid as playing for. Well, if you're playing for leagues, no problems there, mate. I think that's fine. I don't know really Evans's long-term job security, but hey, he looked fine first up. So, I guess you could do worse. I probably prefer Sean Makers if you don't have him, because I think they're the same price anyway. I know the Saints have a lot of halfbacks, but that kid definitely has a really good kick on him, and surely they've got to put more games. Well, just where the Saints season is, it makes more sense to put games into him than it would maybe Logan Evans.
I'm one that I'm looking out for as well is Humphreys from Geelong. So I think he might be a surprise pack at DPP 117k, been named at halfback for Geelong for this week. So someone to definitely look out for. He's my downgrade option that I've actually brought in this week. Yep. I've heard for some people that his VFL has been phenomenal, like almost best on ground for a lot of the games, and a bit of a Stephen Wells kind of sneaky state league mature age pick. So.
Yeah, I brought him in AFL fantasy this week, so I like that. Jack, do you think I should hold McKercher now? Playing VFL again. Obviously, I think it's now to the point where you've held him this long, you probably may as well hold him, because I'd say he's coming in next week now.
This week, from what I've seen from North Talk, he and Griffin Logue have been set to play a full game this week, which means generally after doing that, they'll play, they'll be eligible to play seniors the week after.
Yeah, I can see you sitting there going, I could trade him to Rosie and have Rosie as an M9. So the hard thing is there, it's like, you're bringing in Rosie, but it's not like you're bringing him on field. So the points don't matter as much compared to what maybe McKercher's dual position could mean. And potentially McKercher could, I don't know if he's going to match Rosie on that run home, but he could definitely have a couple of big games. And if it's a guy that you're having as a loophole guy anyway, may as well have the guy that can loophole between your defense and your midfield, because now you're covering both situations where Rosie obviously is just covering your midfield. And that's what Big J was saying before about that whole dual position situation.
Yeah, I'd also be holding personally. If you've held this long, he should come back next week. I don't think it's really worth a trade. Like Rosie as an M9 versus McKercher as an M9 D7, not that much difference.
BJ, just bringing up like the Goey thing again. We still, mate. There's better options. And if you've got plenty of cash in the bank, go up as we were talking about. Even if you're playing for leagues, I know obviously you must really like following the guy, but there are much better options to get in. If you've got plenty of cash, get up to one of those guys we mentioned earlier. Zorko VC. Well, we just talked about that. I think that's the obvious one. Sam, Zorko definitely over Neil. Don't go Neil. The A and B attention will happen. Neil could still work through it, but the fact that they've got other players that'll just run free and do their thing, I'd be more happy with them. If as I think the boys mentioned before, Dunkley's the one that you'd prefer. And the other issue you've got tonight also in regards to Brisbane's midfield is the Ashcroft effect. And even though depending on how right he is, but there's still another gun midfielder who can potentially take points off Neil and Dunkley. I think a few of us, well, not probably us, but a few people out there have forgot how good Ashcroft actually is. We're talking Dacos, Harley Reid. He's in that category of good talent. Obviously, he's missed a year, so it's going to take him some time to get into the swing of things. But he's a kid that, we're going to be talking about him in 3-4 years in our teams as a premium.
Just one thing on that point. I did look into the Ashcroft factor last year. They both, Dunkley and Neil, actually averaged more, somewhat surprisingly, whenever he was playing. So
I like it.
I definitely thought that it would be the other way around as well. But so something to think about.
I like that, mate.
Neil as a VC, yes, the tag could come, but then you've got the fallback C. So it could be worth a punt for me on Neil, just because of how good Neil has been when he hasn't got the attention. Like last 3 weeks, 130 or 70 with the tag and then 149 against Port. So if he runs around tonight, could easily see a 160, runs around free tonight, could see that 160 score at the Gabba. So I don't hate Neil VC personally. I love
it, Nath. This is why you're here, mate. We don't want us all agree all the time. I love it. Follow, and if Nath's saying that, he's number one for a reason. So follow his advice over mine. Corey's saying Gorn got a 0 last year at the Gabba when the lights went out to that night. That was a bizarre night. Absolute bizarre. I can't remember where I was. I don't know if I was at the theater or something like that. I remember my wife and I got home. And I think it was, we might have been seeing once, and we got home and we couldn't believe the footy was still on and it was still over a quarter of the play. It's like, the lights have been out. Well, okay, cool. Get to still watch the footy. Zorko has a massive AF and Supercoach split with like 15 marks and that. So, and if they let him just run around and get marks all night, he will go huge. I do like this from Kai too. Freo could be ugly with no Pierce, who's obviously their captain, because that now means the midfielders can hit up some of those defenders. And does that mean Luke Ryan has to play a more defensive role too this week? So that's also under a bit of consideration with Freo, which hopefully they Sydney kick a few more points this week than what the Suns did, because it showed how much Ryan relies on kickouts.
Yep.
All right, Paul. Paul. Would you trade Horn? We get Horn Francis every week. I love it. Would you trade Horn Francis and Steele to Rosie and Sinclair? Have 24 so-called premiums. I love people's definitions of premiums, but 24 so-called premiums. I'm kind of loving that, mate. But Horn Francis and Steele to Rosie and Sinclair. Oh, it's so side swappy. God, I hate
it.
Not
for me. Not for me.
Yeah, I mean Sinclair's clearly someone you'd love to have in your team. I'm assuming 4 trades left before this move.
It's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, so that would bring you down to 2, and that would be, wouldn't be a great feeling. And I wouldn't hate it if it was a clear sort of upgrade on both positions, but I think Steele's going to be fine on the run home with that Marvel and decent fixture run. Horn Francis has that ceiling up. It sounds like you can push Horn Francis to the bench at the moment if you have 24. So
Paul, here we go. Should be 22 premiums. Well, that changes everything, doesn't it? Yeah, that if it's 22, that I actually probably now lean towards it a little bit more. The fact that it's just because, but then I feel like they probably all average around the same. Yeah, Rosie's probably 10 points a game better than Horn Francis. Sinclair probably is 10 points better than Steele at the moment as it is. But am I really burning trades for those extra potential 20 points where I think you could potentially do other things outside of that? Or if there's a what may even if it's one, I don't mind the Horn Francis to Sinclair. That's maybe a better move just because it opens up dual position, and we talked about the draw with Marvel coming home. So yeah, I'd probably back Steele versus Rosie. I wouldn't do, but Horn Francis to Sinclair, and if you can then get one of your rookies down to get the cash to get one of those guys up, I think that's probably a better move if I'm going to do the side swap. It opens up dual position as well.
Yep, no, that's a good call, I reckon.
Jacko, is it worth holding Oliver or Fife this week? Yeah, I've had a few people message me about Fife. Or should I trade them to Rosie and Simpkin? 100% you should trade these guys to Rosie and Simpkin. Feels a bit sideways to see. This is less sideways because Fife isn't a premium. He's a mid-pricer who's made a bit of cash for us who needs to go.
And
simple. Doesn't look right at the moment.
Just had a look. I think Fife has a break even of 111. Oliver has a 134. So if you don't trade them this week, you're going to lose money.
Exactly.
So it's going to be even harder. Thank you very much, Swiz, for having me on. Nice to meet you.
No problems, mate.
I'll get you to come on the show. We'll see you in a few weeks when pull up your big trophy. And congratulations. Good luck with the rest of the week and what's happening. So all good.
Thanks, Big J. Appreciate you jumping on, mate.
No dramas. Catch you fellas later. And see you, chat. Thanks for a nice time too.
Take it easy.
We'll finish off here, Nath. I'll do one last one, and then
sure.
Actually two, because Crazy Frog deserves. Crazy Frog's awesome on Twitter. So T, I'm trading Sullivan and Oliver. Would you rather Sarong, Rowell, or Dunks and Walsh?
I think for me, it's probably the second option. I think actually, it's definitely Sarong is the clear one out of those four, but Rowell has looked a little concerning. I would not be enjoying owning him if I were an owner right now. The only thing with Walsh, I was looking into his fixture a little bit. I think he has quite a few potential tag targets, potentially GWS, North. It's not as bad actually. I think Dunkley and Walsh would be my call there. Even though not owning Sarong will hurt a little bit, but I think probably the damage has been done. It's probably worth anti-potting him now anyway. So
yeah, no, I agree. And I like that. I like Brisbane and Carlton's draw too much in the run home. We know Dunkley's not going to get that much attention. And as good as Walsh is, there are games where he, like this week, will run free. He'll get no attention from Richmond. There's a couple other games there, where he'll be fine. And they've still got Patrick Cripps in there. They've got other guys that they do need to be mindful as well. So. And Walsh, like Dacos, they are absolute endurance beasts. So even if they're having a poor first half, they can run a tagger into the ground. They're probably the two best to run a tag in the ground. And we see that regularly. Dacos, even games where he might only be sort of 60, 70 at three-quarter time, he can still finish with a 120, 130. I much prefer that. All right, Crazy Frogs. Hey, Swiz, 4 trades left and have Fife and Salem there. Thinking bringing Dunkley for Fife and hold Salem hopefully back next week. He also says, I could do Fife and Salem to Simpkin and Rosie. I kind of like that one better. I don't know if I'd be Salem's actually scoring really well, so that's not a problem. You could easily hold him. And what did you say? 4 trades left. So that would mean only, that would keep you an extra trade, which would be fine. But Salem versus Simpkin, it's probably a bit of a muchness. Would you rather Simpkin and Rosie, or would you rather Dunkley and Salem? I guess that's where.
Yeah, that's tricky. Bring Dunkley for 5, hold Salem. I don't hate Salem now as a D7.
Especially with Petrarca out,
On this move, it's 5. Oh, so it's just he's going to have more cash, is it, on the other one?
Yeah, I'm going to gather he's going to have more.
Yeah.
He's got 50K in the bank, he's saying. So he obviously said 4 trades and have Fife and Sale. I'm thinking of bringing Dunkley for Fife. That means he must be doing another trade.
Yeah.
If he's doing that, he must be doing 2.
I'd definitely boil it down. A Fife definitely has to go. I think he has to go. If you can get something out of him. And so I'd love to own Dunkley and hold Salem. To me, I like that. It depends what else is happening. What was the second option? It was Simpkin as well as
it'd be
Rosie,
Simpkin and Rosie both coming in.
Yeah, I think both options are perfectly fine. Actually, just thinking about it, I'd probably target fixture for see which fixture.
Yeah,
has
if Rev's coming down, that's
home.
How he gets the cash to happen.
Okay. Yeah,
which we're all waiting to see. Yeah, if Rev's named sub. I think that's a big one because I think that'll be coming out very soon. So we're sort of waiting to see where Rev. Do you still have Rev?
I'm going to move him this week to Rankin. He's been great. I'd love to hold him even if he was sub anyway, just as cover and trade Jai Clark instead. But I'm like 3K short, so Jai Clark disappoints once again, unfortunately.
That's the one too. I wanted to trade Jai Clark out because I could have done I could have done my trade with that. And I'm like, 5K.
It's crazy. Every time he's going to make some money, something goes wrong.
And he got like, what was it, like 60 AFL fantasy or something?
Yeah,
so he could have easily needed a 40-point Supercoach game and he would have been fine.
Yep. Oh, dear.
Just brutal. Before we wrap up, I do need to give a shout out. Thank you to JP. If you haven't checked it out already, we did a bit of a Ladbrokes ad. Better say gamble responsibly, but thank you for them and JP organising that with obviously Big J, who was with us, Joe, and a mate of mine, Cole. So we had a lot of fun recording that. So if you haven't checked that out and want a bit of a laugh, especially a laugh at JP, I'm glad they left some of my lines in there too, so get my little bit of acting in. But no, that was a lot of fun. So thank you so much to my good mate organising that. Yeah, so check that out. And as always, thank you for everybody who's jumped on. Thank you so much for taking out the time, Nath. We really do appreciate it.
Pleasure. Always love to chat Supercoach. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem at all, mate. And all the best. And it's hopefully we'll talk in a few weeks' time. And it's you're still right up there fighting the good fight for Supercoach, mate.
Absolutely. Let's hope everything goes my way. VC starting tonight. Hopefully Zorko goes massive. I think I'm going to back him in. So we'll ride that one out.
Love it. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll tune in soon and we'll talk soon. Good luck on your Supercoach weekend. Bye, everyone.